My husband's phone screen lit up on the marble counter. For words glowed in the darkness. "Boss, I miss you." And so I replied, "Come over. My wife isn't home today. Welcome to Tea and Payback, where the tea is hot, the secrets are messy, and karma always finds her way home." Before I go on, just a quick reminder. I share new life stories every day. If you enjoy them, subscribing and liking the video would mean a lot to me. Now sit down, pour yourself a cup of tea, let's continue. My name is Sienna. I'm 32 years old. I'm a project manager at a tech firm in downtown Atlanta, and until 3 seconds ago, I believed my husband was making dinner because he loved me. The kitchen smelled like paradise. Slow-cooked short ribs, the kind that fall apart when you touch them. Jasper stood at the stove in the navy apron I gave him for our anniversary, humming some old Marvin Gaye song, completely unaware that his entire world was about to collapse. From behind, he looked like everything a woman could want. Successful, attentive, a man who knew his way around a kitchen as well as a boardroom. He always told me that making money was an obligation, but cooking for his wife was a privilege. I should have known that privilege had conditions. The message sat there on his iPhone, innocent and deadly. I was supposed to be flipping through a magazine. I was supposed to taste the sauce and tell him it was perfect. Instead, my eyes locked onto that screen, and something inside me went completely still. Not angry, not hurt, just cold. The kind of cold that comes when pain dies and leaves behind something sharper. Sender, Brielle Hayes in turn. For words, "I miss you." I knew that name. Jasper had mentioned her a few months back. Bright girl, he said. Quick learner. Eager to prove herself. What he didn't mention was how eager she was to prove herself in his bed. My heart didn't break. That had happened a week ago when I found the bank statements. Transfers to her account. Dinner receipts. A $1,500 birthday gift while I got flowers and takeout. No, my heart was already dead. What remained was something far more dangerous. Contempt. Calculation. A plan forming in real time. Jasper turned around, flashing that $1,000,000 smile. The fine lines around his eyes only made him more handsome, or at least that's what I used to think. Now they just looked like evidence of wasted time. He asked me to taste the sauce, completely oblivious to the fact that I was holding his entire future in my hands. I picked up the phone. The passcode was our wedding date. The irony almost made me laugh. He used the most sacred day of our lives to protect his dirty secrets. 6 digits later, I was in. The WhatsApp conversation with Brielle sat at the top, that unread message waiting for a response. I didn't open it. That would have shown the blue check marks. Instead, my fingers moved with surgical precision across the keyboard. Come over. My wife isn't home today. I hit send. Watched the message deliver. Watched it get read. Then I took a screenshot, forwarded it to myself, and deleted every trace from his phone. I wanted him blind when the trap snapped shut. I placed the phone back exactly where it was, same angle, same position. My hands were shaking, but not from fear. From rage. The kind that doesn't scream or throw things. The kind that waits. The kind that plans. I looked at Jasper's back as he stirred the pot, and everything about him suddenly looked grotesque. The loving husband act. The devoted partner routine. All of it performance. All of it lies. He wanted to play house. Fine. I'd direct the final scene myself. Jasper served the short ribs on our best serving platter, wiping the edges with a cloth like some Food Network chef. Yesterday, this would have moved me. Today, it looked like poison wrapped in pretty packaging. He loaded my plate with rice, picked the most tender piece of meat, placed it on top like an offering. Eat while it's hot, baby, he said, his voice warm and deep. Went to 3 different markets to find the right cut. Only the best for you. I ate. I chewed. I swallowed. Every bite tasted like ashes. I had to wash it down with water to keep from gagging. Across from me, Jasper ate with enthusiasm, telling me about work. New project. CEO recognition. Promotion coming. But he never mentioned Brielle. Never mentioned the intern. Not once. I wondered how someone masters the art of living two lives. How do you receive an "I miss you" from your mistress, and then sit across from your wife, playing the devoted husband? Maybe he'd done it so many times that even I couldn't tell what was real anymore. Maybe nothing was. I put down my fork, claiming exhaustion. Jasper immediately played concerned, pressing his hand to my forehead to check for fever. His touch felt like ice. I turned away, making some excuse about water. My eyes found the clock. 7:15. It would take her 30 to 45 minutes to get here from wherever she was. Her office, her apartment, didn't matter. She was coming. The invitation was too good to resist. My wife isn't home today. A spell more powerful than any love potion. I returned to the table. Jasper was clearing dishes, telling me to relax, that he'd handle cleanup. The image of my husband doing dishes used to make my friends jealous. Now it just looked like another scene in his disgusting theater. I sat on the couch, TV remote in hand, but I didn't turn it on. My eyes stayed fixed on the front door. My ears tuned to every sound in the hallway. Part of me hoped she wouldn't come, that it was all some sick joke, and I could keep living in denial. But the colder part of me, the part that had been growing since I found those bank statements, prayed for that doorbell to ring. I wanted this pain dragged into the light. Abscesses only heal when they burst, even if the scar lasts forever. Every minute felt like an hour. The sound of water stopped. Jasper came out drying his hands, asking about dessert. I shook my head, gave him a tight smile. He didn't notice how forced it was. He was too confident in his own performance. Or maybe he'd never paid close enough attention to notice anything in my eyes. 8 o'clock. The apartment fell silent except for the ticking clock. Jasper sat across from me, scrolling through his phone, the picture of domestic tranquility. He probably thought it would be another peaceful evening. Or maybe he was already composing his next message to Brielle, planning what he'd say once I fell asleep. He had no idea the storm was about to break right at his door. Ding-dong. The sound wasn't loud, but in that silence, it exploded like a starting gun. Jasper's head snapped up. Surprise and confusion flickered across his face. He looked at the clock, then at the door, then at me. Who could that be at this hour? I stayed perfectly still on the couch, my expression carved from ice. Stay seated, I told him, my voice soft but absolute. I'll get it. I stood and walked toward the door. Every footstep on the hardwood floor sounded heavy final. My heart pounded, not from fear, but from the thrill of watching a trap spring shut. I took a breath, straightened my posture, and put my hand on the knob. I turned it slowly. The heavy door swung open. In front of me stood a young black woman, petite and pretty, makeup carefully applied, wearing a dress that showed off her figure. In her hands, she held a small bakery box with a single cupcake inside. The flirtatious smile on her lips vanished the instant she saw me. Her eyes went wide. Her face drained of color. Her hands started shaking, nearly dropping the box. She expected Jasper. She'd probably imagined jumping into his arms, telling him in that sweet voice how much she'd missed him. Instead, she got me. The wife. The obstacle. The woman blocking the door with a gaze sharp enough to cut. I said nothing at first. Just watched her panic. Let the silence suffocate her. Let her feel what it's like to be trapped. Behind me, Jasper's footsteps approached. Who is it, babe? Why are you taking so long? His voice made Brielle flinch. She looked past me into the apartment, then back at my face, the look of a thief caught red-handed. I smiled. It wasn't a kind smile. Hello, Brielle, I said, loud enough for both of them to hear. My voice carried cold authority. Are you here to see my husband? The question hit her like a bucket of ice water. Behind me, I heard Jasper's footsteps stop dead. The door was open. The show had officially begun. Brielle was shrinking before my eyes, clutching that cupcake box like it might save her. She stammered something about hearing Jasper was sick, about passing through the neighborhood, about hoping he'd feel better. The lie was pathetic. I knew Jasper wasn't sick. I knew this gated community was impossible to just pass through. But I didn't correct her. The cat doesn't kill the mouse immediately. It plays first. I kept my voice cold and steady. If you take one step out of this hallway, tomorrow your entire office and your family back in South Carolina will receive every photo and message between you two. Come inside. Let's talk like adults, and I'll let you keep some dignity. Brielle froze. She followed me inside, trembling. I told her since she was here, she might as well see the place. That it had a great vibe. That I wanted to formally introduce her to my husband. I stretched out that word. Husband. Like stamping ownership papers. Jasper had reached the living room by then. Seeing me walk in with Brielle, his face shattered. His eyes bulged. His mouth hung open. The phone in his hand fell onto the couch. He looked between us, trapped and terrified. I led Brielle to the armchair facing the main sofa and told her to sit. She perched on the edge, back straight, knees together, not daring to look up. I gestured for Jasper to sit next to me. He moved like a zombie, stumbling to the couch. Even though the air conditioning was on, sweat beaded on his forehead. He sat as far from me as possible, like I was a bomb. I started with introductions. Pointed at Brielle, told Jasper this was that wonderful intern he'd praised so highly. The one who'd come to visit him at night with cake after hearing her boss was sick. Then I introduced Jasper to Brielle, calling him the most exemplary husband in the world, a man who'd never disappointed me. Every word was a needle in Jasper's skin. I watched him shrink. Brielle shot Jasper a pleading look, expecting him to say something, to defend her, to fix this. But he just stared at the floor, fiddling with his shirt. His cowardice was beautiful to watch. The man who seemed so powerful in the office had become a pathetic child afraid of his wife. I stood up, said I'd get drinks. Asked Brielle what she wanted. Orange juice. Water. Tea. Water's fine, she whispered. I smiled and walked to the kitchen. The living room went silent behind me. I knew they were exchanging panicked looks, but too terrified to speak. That's exactly what I wanted. Let the fear eat them alive. In the kitchen, I made noise. Opening cabinets. Taking out glasses. I passed right by the expensive crystal we used for guests. My hand stopped at a pack of thin disposable plastic cups. The kind you get at a barbecue. I took one and filled it with tap water. The choice wasn't accidental. I wanted her to understand her place in this house was as cheap and temporary as that cup. Something you use and throw away. I went back with a tray. Set the plastic cup in front of Brielle. For Jasper and myself, I served tea in elegant porcelain cups with gold trim. The contrast was brutal on the glass table. Brielle looked at that plastic cup, and her face flushed deep red. She understood the message. It was an insult without words, deeper than any curse. I sat next to Jasper, deliberately pressing against him. Took his arm and rested my head on his shoulder. He went rigid, muscles locked with tension. Through his shirt, I felt his heart hammering. Cold sweat slid down his temples. I started asking Brielle about the internship. If Jasper was demanding. If he didn't push the interns too hard. While I spoke, I caressed Jasper's arm and shot him loving looks. Brielle answered in monosyllables, unable to watch this tender scene. In her eyes, I saw envy, bitterness, fear. She was watching the man she wanted belong completely to someone else. The air grew thick. Even the hum of the AC couldn't cut through the suffocating atmosphere. Suddenly I changed topics. Turned to Jasper with fake excitement and brought up our trip to Barbados next month. Described it in vivid detail. The turquoise water, the white sand, romantic dinners under the stars. Then I mentioned the cabin we were looking at in the North Georgia mountains. How we'd spend weekends gardening and fishing. How we were already planning to take care of our aging parents. How next year was perfect to start trying for a baby. Every word was a dagger in Brielle's heart. She was realizing she was completely excluded from Jasper's real life. The future, the assets, the long-term plans. All of it belonged to us. There was no room for her. She was just a distraction. a temporary thrill. Jasper sat in agonizing silence, neither confirming nor denying anything. He looked like he was sitting on hot coals, wishing this torture would end. But I wasn't letting him go that easily. I turned to Brielle with a smile. You're young and pretty. I'm sure you have men lining up. Me, I'm getting older. I have to hold on to this one, so he doesn't slip away. I'm scared someone might try to steal him. They say nowadays there are so many thirsty side pieces popping up everywhere, right? Brielle flinched, clenched her fists until her knuckles turned white. She knew exactly who I was talking about. The term thirsty side pieces sliced through the last shred of her pride. She mumbled something unintelligible, avoiding my gaze. Her shoulders shook despite her efforts to stay composed. But I wasn't done. I turned back to Jasper, squeezed his arm tighter, nails digging into his skin through the fabric. Changed my voice to something sweet, but kept my gaze sharp. Remember that cabin in North Georgia we saw last week? My parents loved it. They promised $15,000 for renovations as a gift for their future grandchildren. At the mention of children, Jasper's body went rigid. It was his weakest point. We'd been married 6 years, postponing kids until we reached stability. And now, when everything was finally ready, I discover this betrayal. But I brought up children deliberately. It was the strongest anchor. Family legitimacy. Something a mistress like Brielle could never provide. I described a future filled with children's laughter. Said next year was ideal. That I hoped for a boy. Then I turned to Brielle. Don't you think that's a wonderful plan? The teaspoon Brielle was holding clattered against the saucer. She fumbled to pick it up, face flushed. It's a great plan. I'm sure you'll be very happy. How ironic. A forced blessing from the rival's lips. Inside, I knew she was screaming. I continued my assault on the financial front. Told Jasper I'd make the transfer for the down payment tomorrow. That he should sign the title papers fast. Deliberately emphasized the house would be in both our names. A declaration of sovereignty. A warning that everything he had was tied to me, and leaving would cost him everything. Jasper nodded, sweating, wishing I would shut up. He knew the warning behind every sweet word. Don't be stupid. Don't trade everything for a moment of pleasure. The conversation about property and children seemed to drain the last bit of life from Brielle. She hugged that water glass like it might provide warmth that had vanished long ago. I lifted my gold-rimmed cup, took a sip, savored the aroma of expensive green tea, commented on how delicious it was, offered Brielle some, but my gaze lingered on her cheap plastic cup with false pity. Are you okay with just water, Brielle? Want me to make you orange juice? Water's so bland. My voice was kind like charity, like giving coins to a beggar, with an edge of contempt. No, I'm fine, Brielle said quickly. Water's enough. I don't want to be a bother. The word bother almost made me laugh. Her presence here at this hour was the ultimate bother. I set my cup down. The sound of porcelain against glass echoed in the room. I told Jasper to cut some fruit for our guest. That a gentleman should be hospitable. Jasper jumped up like he'd been shocked and went to the kitchen. He peeled an apple clumsily, hands shaking, leaving the skin jagged. The man who once carved roses out of radishes for me couldn't handle a simple apple. Fear had paralyzed his skills. When he put the plate on the table, I stabbed the best piece with a fork and brought it to his mouth. Open up, baby. Let me feed you. Don't touch it with your hands. They're dirty. Jasper hesitated, then accepted the apple. The scene of a couple feeding each other in front of a third party was natural and profoundly provocative. I pushed the plate toward Brielle. You eat too. These are Honeycrisp. Very sweet. Brielle stared at the piece Jasper had just eaten, then at the plate, like there was a knot in her throat. How could she swallow watching this display? I saw her eyes turning red, probably crying inside, regretting her stupidity in coming here to be humiliated. But I felt no pity. My compassion died the moment I saw that message. Mercy is a luxury I don't grant to people trying to destroy someone else's happiness. Silence took over again, but this time the air smelled like gunpowder. Brielle cleared her throat, maybe trying to recover some image in front of Jasper. Asked shyly about his health. "Boss, how's your stomach? Is it better?" Her voice was low but concerned. She even offered to have her mother send honey with black garlic from back home, which was supposedly good for stomach issues. Jasper's face turned pale. He denied it quickly, said he was fine, it wasn't necessary. He glanced at me, terrified, knowing his mistress had just made a fatal error. She demonstrated knowledge of his private life that exceeded normal professional boundaries. I let out a short, icy laugh. Looked at Brielle with a piercing gaze. "Wow, Brielle, you really worry about your boss. Look at that. The wife who lives and sleeps with him every night hasn't made him that remedy yet. But you, an intern here just a few months, know about his ailments." I deliberately stretched out the words lives and sleeps with him. Does Jasper complain about his health in the office in front of everyone? Or do you see each other alone so often you know details of his diet? Brielle went speechless. Her face turned from red to purple. She stammered that she'd simply seen him touching his stomach with a grimace and asked out of concern. Pathetic excuse. I knew Jasper's stomach issues were chronic. To protect his image as a strong leader, he rarely showed weakness in public. Only when he was alone with someone he trusted. I shot Jasper a withering look. "And you? Why are you worrying your employees at work? Next time you feel bad, tell me your wife. Don't make other people worry and bring you medicine. They'll think your wife doesn't take care of you. The other day you said you were late because of a client dinner and your stomach hurt. I see now what kind of client dinner that was." At my hint, Jasper lowered his head. He knew exactly what I meant. The night he used the work dinner excuse, he'd actually been with Brielle, probably complaining about his pains to gain sympathy. I just exposed their relationship's true nature. Her excessive concern proved she'd crossed the line. The clock marked 9. The game had reached its peak. Time to deliver the final blow. I slowly pulled out my phone and placed it on the table. Slid my finger across the screen like I was checking messages, then sighed deliberately. The world is so complicated these days. News is full of scandals. My friends tell me young girls are bold now. They message other women's husbands like they're single. No shame at all. I paused, watching their reactions. Brielle's breathing had accelerated. Jasper was wiping sweat from his forehead. I sharpened my voice. I check Jasper's phone sometimes to help with work stuff. Lately I've seen messages from unknown numbers. A young girl, by the looks of it. Innocent-sounding name. Must be an intern. She sends very affectionate messages. I glanced at Brielle. Her face had lost all color. Her lips trembled. With a mocking smile, I threw the final punch. "You know what, Brielle? Just the other day, I was home and Jasper was making dinner when suddenly a girl sends a message saying, 'I miss you.' Some nerve, right? With the wife at home, daring to send that. Was she challenging me?" My words struck like lightning. Brielle looked at me with terror in her eyes. She understood everything. The "I miss you" message. The reply come over. My wife isn't home. It had all been a trap. A perfect trap I'd set myself. And she, like a stupid moth, had flown straight into the flame. Brielle's hands and feet started shaking uncontrollably. She looked at me like I was a monster. She realized the woman across from her wasn't some naive housewife, but a master of psychological warfare. I'd known everything from the start but acted with total calm, inviting her in, serving her water, offering cake, then ripping off the mask layer by layer until she stood naked in her shame. Jasper turned toward me with pure horror on his face. He'd never imagined I'd read that message. Never imagined I was twisted enough to lure Brielle here and humiliate her this way. My intelligence and cruelty sent a chill down his spine. He realized he'd vastly underestimated his wife. I looked Brielle straight in the eyes. My gaze was cold and contemptuous. I didn't need to say anything else. My silence was the severest sentence. I'd revealed everything, but hadn't pronounced her name directly yet. I wanted to see if she had any dignity left to leave on her own. Brielle couldn't take it anymore. The invisible pressure, Jasper's cowardice, the cruel truth crushing her will. She grabbed her purse. In her haste, it hit the chair with a thud. She jumped up, legs wobbling, almost falling. Without daring to look at me, head down, she mumbled that she had to go. Something urgent at home. Her mother needed her back. She was sorry she couldn't stay longer. Her voice cracked, on the verge of tears. Without waiting for a reply, she headed for the door, running like a pursued thief. The cupcake box sat abandoned on the table, proof of her miserable failure. Jasper made a move to get up, probably to walk her out or apologize, but I was faster. I put my hand on his thigh and squeezed hard, signaling him to stay. My gaze hardened, warning him not to do anything stupid. Jasper understood and stayed frozen, watching Brielle disappear. I got up and followed her slowly to the entrance. Walked with calm assurance in contrast to her panic. Brielle was trying to put on her shoes, but her hands shook so badly she couldn't manage. I leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed, watching with pity and contempt. When she finally got her shoes on and prepared to leave, I called out, "Brielle." She stopped dead, turned around with a scared, pleading look. Probably feared I'd make a scene in the hallway, insult her, grab her hair. But I didn't. My dignity didn't allow me to act like that. I walked up to her and whispered in her ear, low enough so only we heard. My voice was soft as a breeze, but cold as ancient ice. "Next time you want to see my husband, call first. If you go wandering around at this hour, the neighbors might misunderstand and think something shady is happening in this respectable building. And remember, Jasper's wife isn't always out of the house." Brielle's face drained of the last drop of blood. She nodded repeatedly like a bobblehead, stammered a yes, and ran toward the elevator, pressing the button frantically, desperate to escape. Her figure, small and pathetic, was silhouetted against the bright hallway light. I watched until the elevator doors closed, swallowing her whole. A faint smile crossed my lips. One down. The young prey had gotten a good scare. Now she wouldn't dare approach my husband even if they paid her. But the war wasn't over. The main enemy, the one who'd caused the deepest wound, was still sitting in the living room. I turned and slammed the door shut. The sound of the lock announced the beginning of the trial. I didn't go straight back. I stayed clutching the cold doorknob for a few seconds. Waves of nausea rose from my stomach. I'd pulled off a brilliant performance, but the price was a wound bleeding in my heart. I turned and walked slowly into the living room. Jasper was still in the same spot, motionless on the cream leather sofa. Head down, hands clasped over his knees. His appearance was pathetic, far removed from the sophisticated man he used to be. But his misery didn't inspire pity, only contempt. I walked up to him, picked up his phone from the table, looked at him, then at the phone, and suddenly smashed it against the glass surface. Crack! The sharp, violent sound shattered the suffocating silence. The screen exploded into spiderweb cracks, a perfect reflection of our marriage. Jasper jumped, looking at me with terror. I crossed my arms and looked down at him with an icy glare. "Explain yourself." "The message, come over. My wife isn't home today. I sent that. Did you think I was an idiot who didn't know anything?" Jasper's jaw went slack. He stared at me in disbelief. He didn't expect me to reveal my hand so fast and so forcefully. Maybe he thought I only had vague suspicions. He never imagined I'd controlled everything from the start. His lips trembled, trying to form a pathetic excuse. "Baby, it's a misunderstanding. We're just coworkers. Her coming over was a total surprise. I swear I didn't know." He tried playing victim. His eyes dodged mine. I let out a bitter laugh. "Coworkers. A coworker sends you a message at 8 saying she misses you. A coworker knows your eating habits and ailments better than your own wife. A coworker dares to come to your house thinking your wife isn't home." I moved closer, looking him straight in the face, marking every syllable. "Don't take me for a fool. We've lived together 6 years. I know you better than you know yourself." That guilty look when the doorbell rang. That jump. That cowardly attitude in front of your mistress. Everything gave you away. Jasper lowered his head, not daring to reply. He knew that faced with such evident truth, any lie was useless. His silence was the clearest confession. I felt immense disappointment. The man I'd loved and trusted was nothing but a dirty liar, a coward incapable of taking responsibility. His silence fueled my anger. I went to my purse on the cabinet and pulled out a stack of papers I'd prepared that afternoon, evidence I'd been gathering in secret for the last week. I threw the papers in his face. White sheets flew and scattered over the destroyed phone. Jasper picked one up with shaking hands. Bank statement. Last 3 months. I'd circled transfers to Brielle Hayes with memos like gift and lunch. The amounts weren't huge, a few hundred each time, but suspiciously frequent. One stood out. $1,500 last week memo, happy birthday. I pointed at it, voice rising. And how do you explain this? $1,500 for an intern's birthday. For my birthday, flowers and takeout was enough. Your generosity is truly admirable. Jasper was speechless, sweating profusely. He didn't expect me to know his finances in such detail. But that wasn't all. I pulled out screenshots of WhatsApp conversations from his iPad where he'd forgotten to log out. Flirty messages, lunch dates, movie plans, sickeningly sweet expressions of longing. I threw another photo. Movie ticket from 2 weeks ago, 11 at night. That day he told me he was late because of a client dinner. Actually, he was watching a movie with his mistress. Finally, I pulled out a photo of a long brown hair found on his passenger seat. My hair was black and short. That hair was undoubtedly Brielle's. Faced with irrefutable proof, Jasper crumbled. No way to deny or excuse anymore. His mask of morality had been ripped off, revealing his true nature. He let his arms drop and sank into the sofa with despair in his eyes. Then he started crying. Tears of a grown man, something I'd rarely seen. I'm sorry. I went crazy. She seduced me. Please forgive me just this once. A late apology and a cowardly excuse, shifting blame. Cheating men always use the same script. I fell into temptation. I couldn't help it. Seeing him cry froze my heart. I went to the kitchen, grabbed the pot with the short ribs he'd prepared with such care. Under his astonished gaze, I dumped the entire contents into the trash can. The delicious aroma mixed with the sour smell of garbage, creating a nauseating stench. I turned to Jasper and threw my final line at him. My love for you is like this stew. Before it was delicious and precious. But once it gets contaminated, it's nothing but trash. And I don't eat trash. My act was like a bucket of cold water. Jasper seemed to wake from his delirium. He realized I wasn't joking. The determination in my eyes announced an irrevocable break. He ran toward me, fell to his knees, hugged my legs, cried inconsolably, begging me not to leave, not to divorce him. Swore he'd end everything with Brielle, that he'd quit his job if necessary, that he'd do anything to fix his mistake. He appealed to our parents, to our 6 years of marriage, trying to hold me back. I remained rigid as stone, letting him cry while hugging my legs. My heart was already dead. His oaths only produced disgust. If he'd really valued 6 years of love, he wouldn't have slept with another woman. If he'd really thought about our parents, he wouldn't have let things reach this point. Coldly, I pushed his hands away and stepped back. Looked at him with pity. Keep the little dignity you have left. Don't be pathetic. My decision is final. I turned and went straight to the bedroom. Inside the closet was the large suitcase I'd packed that afternoon. I pulled it out and threw in more clothes and personal items. I didn't take much, just what was truly mine. This house, this furniture, now seemed stained by betrayal. I walked out with the suitcase. Jasper was still on the floor, sobbing. His cries echoed in the silent space. I left a sheet of paper on the table. The promissory note for $40,000 my parents lent us at the beginning when we couldn't afford the condo renovation, along with receipts in my father's name. These $40,000 are a clear debt, I told him with an icy voice. Don't even think about not paying. When you sell the house, first thing is settling this debt, then we split the rest. Get ready to pay back every last cent. The house is in both our names, but I'm not fighting for it. I'm giving it to you, so you can live with your mistress. But my parents' money, you have to return it. Jasper looked at the papers, then at me. Pure despair in his eyes. He knew he couldn't get that much money overnight, but I didn't care. It was the price for his betrayal. I wanted him to feel the pain of loss to his core, both emotionally and financially. I dragged the suitcase toward the door. Before leaving, I took one last look. What was once our home had become the tomb of my love. I opened the door and stepped into the breezy hallway. The sound of the door closing behind me echoed once more, ending 6 years of my youth with that shameless man. Without looking back, I walked with steady steps toward the elevator. A new life awaited me. It would be hard, but at least it would be clean. The Uber traveled through empty city streets. Sitting in the back, I watched streetlights pass. My mind was blank, but strangely light. I didn't cry. Tears seemed to have dried inside, crystallized into sharp determination. I was heading to Maya's apartment. My best friend since college. Maya was a prestigious lawyer specializing in divorce and asset disputes. Strong, decisive, extremely intelligent. I'd warned her ahead of time, so she was waiting in the lobby when I arrived. Seeing me get out with a gaunt face, dragging the suitcase, Maya didn't ask questions. She approached silently and gave me a tight hug. At that warm gesture, I almost broke down, but I held it in. It wasn't time to show weakness. Maya took me to her apartment. Small but cozy, filled with the pleasant scent of lavender. She offered hot tea and told me to sit and tell her everything. So I did. I told her from the message to the trap I set inviting Brielle home, the confrontation with Jasper, my decision to leave. I spoke with surprising calm, like telling someone else's story. When I finished, Maya slammed her hand on the table, let out a curse, and told me I'd done very well, that a cheating man is unforgivable, that my way of handling the mistress had been next level, civilized but extremely cruel. Maya began analyzing from a legal perspective, reviewed the evidence I'd gathered, bank statements, messages, photos. She nodded, said with that she had more than enough to win in court, offered to take my case if Jasper didn't accept mutual divorce. But Maya told me before getting to court, we had to teach that perfect couple a lesson they wouldn't forget. Divorce was my liberation, but true justice was punishing the traitor. She proposed a more subtle revenge plan. Instead of making a scene or exposing him on social media to become gossip, we'd attack what mattered most to Jasper: his career, his reputation. Maya instructed me to organize all proofs into a single file. She'd help draft a whistleblower email to send to management at Jasper's company. A fatal blow to his finances and credibility. 1,000 times more painful than a couple of slaps. I nodded. Our eyes met, determination shining in them. That night would be the night we planned the final battle. The weekend passed in terrifying silence. Jasper didn't stop calling and messaging, but I didn't answer. I turned off my phone and dedicated all my time at Maya's preparing the special gift for my husband and his mistress. Maya helped me draft the email. Instead of insults or slander, we used professional, objective, sharp language like an indictment. Subject line: report on internal code of conduct violation and inappropriate relationship between team lead and intern. I scanned all proofs. WhatsApp screenshots with suggestive conversations. Bank statements proving salary misuse for gifts. Evidence of embezzlement. Photo of movie tickets during work hours as proof of professional negligence. Maya organized everything into a single PDF over 10 megabytes, clearly noting dates, times, places. Monday morning, the sky was gray, predicting a storm. At 9 sharp, the time when all office workers sit at desks checking email, I turned on the computer. Maya sat next to me, hand on my shoulder in support. I took a deep breath and reviewed the draft one last time. The recipient list included the CEO, HR director, heads of involved departments. I didn't send it to the whole company. I didn't want to become cheap gossip, only to people with power to decide Jasper and Brielle's fate. The mouse cursor stopped over the send button. My heart pounded, not from fear, but from tension of the decisive moment. A single click would completely change 3 lives. Jasper would lose the career he built for 10 years. Brielle would lose the future barely starting to bloom. And I would put a period on a painful past to start a new page. I remembered Brielle's brazen look arriving at my house. Remembered Jasper's cowardice kneeling for forgiveness. Remembered the short ribs thrown in trash. The last shred of compassion in my heart vanished. "Goodbye, ex-husband," I whispered as I pressed firmly on the mouse button. Sent. A short, cold notification appeared on screen. The email loaded with the death sentence had been delivered. I leaned back and let out a long sigh of relief. It was over. The arrow had been released. No one could stop it. Now I just had to wait for the storm to break over the traitors' heads. That Monday, the atmosphere at Jasper's company must have been suffocating. According to a contact who worked in the same department, my email caused huge impact, spreading like wildfire in minutes. Jasper tried acting normal upon arriving at work, but inside he must have been consumed by panic. At 10, the HR director called him into a conference room. There, they presented proof he'd used the corporate card for personal expenses with Brielle and falsified receipts for business meals. Embezzlement by the book, and he was suspended without pay pending full audit. Jasper stood up, face pale as wax, opened his mouth to excuse himself, to say it was a misunderstanding, slander. But the HR director raised a hand firmly, cutting him off. On the table, he left a thick folder with a printout of that very PDF I'd sent. Faced with irrefutable proof, Jasper went mute. 2 security guards approached and asked him to gather personal items and leave immediately. Everyone was stunned seeing how the man, who until then was a respected team lead, was escorted out like a criminal. Jasper walked in silence, head down, amidst murmurs of watching people. That public humiliation would mark his career with an indelible stain. I, from Maya's house, received the news by phone without feeling emotion. I didn't laugh with satisfaction, didn't feel pity. It was the price of betrayal. When he trampled our marriage chasing his desires, he'd signed the death warrant of his career. 3 days later, his termination was official. Reason communicated in an internal memo. Serious violation of professional ethics and damage to company image and trust. Jasper not only lost his job, but entered the blacklist of HR managers in the industry. In this city, rumors fly faster than wind. Once your moral reputation is stained, especially by scandal with a subordinate, career doors close almost completely. Financial consequences didn't take long. Jasper lost his main income, but bank loans kept coming due. Car note, condo mortgage, credit cards. Everything became a noose tightening around his neck. Before, thanks to his high salary and my good management, he lived comfortably. Now, just monthly interest made him sweat bullets. My phone wouldn't stop ringing. Jasper's number. Seeing the name husband blinking on screen, I let out a dry laugh and changed his name in contacts to Jasper Chin. I didn't answer. Let it ring until it cut off. Then messages started. At first, please asking forgiveness, begging me to withdraw the report to give him a chance to start over. Since I didn't reply, the tone changed to accusations, calling me cruel and heartless for ruining his life. I skimmed and deleted them all. Cruel. When he was in bed with another woman while I waited at home with dinner ready, did he think about cruelty? When he used our joint money to buy expensive gifts for his mistress, did he think about my effort? I'd only claimed what was fair. Even his parents called. My mother-in-law, crying, insulted me, calling me a bad wife who destroyed her son and family. Said it was normal for a man to have an affair, that a woman should endure to keep peace. Hearing that, I felt bitter resignation. I told my mother-in-law calmly I couldn't live with a traitor and hung up. Blocked numbers of his entire family. I didn't want more lectures on hypocritical morality. Jasper had lost everything. Wife, family, career, reputation, now drowning in debt. He'd wander through that large empty apartment facing four walls and overwhelming loneliness. It was the fairest punishment for someone who hadn't valued what he had. Brielle's fate wasn't much different. As soon as Jasper was suspended, she was called to HR. She entered with swollen eyes and gaunt look, far from the confident image of that night. The decision to terminate her internship was immediate. Reason: violation of internal conduct rules and detriment to work environment. Brielle cried, begged for a chance, said she was young and fell into temptation. But in the ruthless corporate world, naive excuses are useless. She was at a major corporation. Being fired dishonorably meant doors to her future had closed halfway. Worse than losing the job was contempt of her peers. The story of the brazen mistress who challenged the legitimate wife became the hottest topic in anonymous company chats. When Brielle was packing things in a cardboard box, no one approached to talk or help. Everyone looked with disdain, whispering behind her back. Men who used to hit on her now avoided her like plague, fearing getting splashed by scandal. Brielle left alone, carrying her box. The long empty hallway seemed like a path of thorns awaiting her. In front of the elevator, she crossed paths with the security guard who'd witnessed her flight days before. The man's look of pity was the last straw. Brielle broke down crying loudly. She ran out, leaving behind people's mockery. According to Maya, after that incident, Brielle couldn't stand the stairs and moved apartments, put all social media on private, and disappeared from the virtual world. An expensive lesson for a young woman just starting life. She tried trading beauty and youth for something vain. In the end, she lost the most valuable thing: her honor and self-esteem. I didn't feel sorry. She chose that path, ignoring morals and ethics. The consequences were hers alone. I only hope after this painful failure, she learns to live more correctly. 2 months later, we saw each other again in court for divorce settlement. Jasper seemed to have aged 10 years. Unkempt beard, wrinkled clothes. He looked at me with pleading eyes, but I maintained cold distance. Maya accompanied me as my lawyer. Her presence, professional and sharp, intimidated Jasper even more. In court, Jasper tried clinging to the idea he still loved me and wanted to recover our relationship. But Maya presented irrefutable proof of his infidelity, wiping out his weak hope in one stroke. Asset division was the point of greatest tension. The luxury condo was our biggest asset. Jasper, out of pride, wanted to keep it. Didn't want to find himself on the street. Proposed paying me my share in monthly installments. I let out a laugh of contempt and shook my head firmly. I wasn't allowing any financial link to tie me to my ex-husband. Maya presented my conditions in my name. Either he paid me 50% of house value in a single lump sum plus the $40,000 for renovation my parents contributed, or we sold the house and split the money. He, of course, had to take charge of the entire pending mortgage. Jasper's face, unemployed and in debt, turned white. Where was he going to get hundreds of thousands overnight? The bank had already started sending foreclosure notices for being 3 months behind on mortgage. In the end, he had no choice but to accept sale of the house. The apartment, once his pride, was put up for sale as an opportunity below market price for quick sale. After paying mortgage, paying me my share and my parents $40,000, Jasper was left with barely anything. He signed divorce papers with trembling hand. His crooked signature put the period on 6 years of marriage. He walked out of courthouse empty-handed, both literally and figuratively. Without house, without car, he'd already sold it to pay debts. Without wife, without job, he stood alone in the sunny courthouse courtyard, watching in silence as I left in a taxi. The price was very high, but it was entirely his fault. I received money from house sale and asset division. A considerable sum, enough to start a new life. Instead of a big apartment like before, I chose a smaller, cozy condo in a quiet neighborhood full of trees. I decorated my new home to my taste. Gone were ostentatious, flashy furniture to satisfy Jasper's vanity. In their place, I put soft beige tones, fresh plants, and a simple solid wood bookshelf. Every corner reflected my personality and transmitted unusual peace. Tonight, I invited Maya to the housewarming. We're sitting on the balcony with cool breeze, drinking red wine, gazing at the illuminated city. Maya toasted to my liberation, to having escaped that disaster. I smiled and clinked my glass with my valuable friends. Without her strength and determination, I probably wouldn't have weathered this storm with such resolve. My phone vibrated with a notification. Direct deposit. I've been promoted to senior project manager after successfully leading a major initiative. Intense work has helped me gradually distance myself from pain of the past. I opened Facebook and saw a message from a stranger. Her profile picture was a sunflower in full bloom. She was thanking me. Turns out Maya had shared my story anonymously on a women's forum to alert others, changing all names and personal details. The woman told me reading my story gave her courage to leave her husband who'd been mistreating and cheating on her for years. Reading the message, I felt strange warmth in my heart. My pain hadn't been entirely useless. It had become motivation and a lesson for other women navigating a sea of suffering. I took a deep breath, enjoying fresh autumn night air. The past remained closed behind courthouse doors. Now before me extends a wide sky full of hope. I'm Sienna. I'm 32 years old. I'm single, independent, and happy. I smiled and took a sip of wine. The bitter taste and sweet aftertaste resemble my life. You have to go through bitterness to savor the sweetness of freedom. Some women endure betrayal in silence, letting it poison them slowly from within. Others explode in rage, screaming and breaking things, losing their dignity in the chaos. But there's a third way. The cold way. The calculated way. The way that doesn't just end a relationship, but dismantles everything the traitor built. His career, his reputation, his financial stability, his future. Jasper thought he could have everything. The devoted wife at home and the exciting mistress on the side. He thought I was too trusting, too comfortable, too invested in our life to ever suspect. He was wrong. Brielle thought she could waltz into another woman's life and take what didn't belong to her. Thought her youth and beauty gave her some kind of advantage. Thought love, or whatever she called it, justified crossing every line. She was wrong too. The truth is simple. When someone shows you who they really are, believe them. Don't make excuses. Don't accept apologies that come only after they're caught. Don't let anyone convince you that betrayal is something to endure for the sake of peace. Peace built on lies isn't peace. It's surrender. I didn't surrender. I strategized. I gathered evidence. I set a trap so perfect they walked into it thinking they were getting exactly what they wanted. And when the door closed behind them, they realized too late they'd entered a cage. Some people might say I went too far, that destroying 2 careers was excessive, that I should have just divorced quietly and moved on. But here's what those people don't understand. Jasper didn't just cheat on me. He stole from our joint accounts to fund his affair. He used company resources for personal gain. He lied to everyone, including his employers, his family, his friends. He built his betrayal on a foundation of fraud and deception that went far beyond our marriage. I simply brought the truth to light. What happened after that? Those were consequences of his own actions. Brielle didn't just pursue a man she found attractive. She knowingly targeted someone's husband. She accepted expensive gifts bought with money that belonged to me. She participated in deception that could have destroyed a family. She made her choices with full awareness of the harm she was causing. I simply removed the shadows where she was hiding. What happened after that? Those were consequences of her own choices. The real twist in this story isn't that I caught them. It's that I never lost control. Not once. Even when my heart was breaking, even when I wanted to scream, even when rage threatened to consume me, I stayed cold. I stayed sharp. I stayed 3 steps ahead. Because revenge isn't about anger. Revenge is about justice. And justice requires patience, precision, the willingness to play the long game while your enemies think they're winning. That night when Brielle stood at my door holding that pathetic cupcake, she thought she was walking into a romantic evening with her lover. Instead, she walked into a courtroom where I was judge, jury, and executioner. That morning when Jasper arrived at his office thinking he'd weather whatever storm was coming, he had no idea the hurricane had already made landfall. By the time he saw the devastation, it was far too late to seek shelter. Now I sit here in my new home, smaller but entirely mine, and I feel something I haven't felt in months. Freedom. Not just from a bad marriage, but from the weight of living a lie. From pretending everything was fine when it wasn't. From sacrificing my dignity to preserve someone else's comfort. Maya asks me sometimes if I regret any of it. If I wish I'd handled things differently. If part of me still loves the man I married. The answer is no. No. And absolutely not. The man I married died the moment he sent his first flirty message to another woman. What remained was an imposter wearing his face, and I had no obligation to protect an imposter. Tomorrow I start my new position. Bigger office, bigger salary, bigger responsibilities. I earned it through my own merit, not as part of some couple's joint success story. It's mine alone, and that makes it sweeter than anything I had before. Next month I'm planning a trip. Somewhere I've always wanted to go, but Jasper never had time for. Somewhere I can be completely alone with my thoughts, my freedom, my future. And sometime next year, when I'm ready, maybe I'll open my heart again. To someone who understands that trust isn't a game. That marriage isn't a prison you escape through affairs. That love, real love, doesn't come with betrayal as a side dish. But that's for future Sienna to decide. Present Sienna is perfectly content being single, independent, and happy. The doorbell rings. Maya's here with more wine and that wicked grin that says she's got gossip. I answer the door with a smile. A real smile this time, not the mask I wore for so long. Behind me, the apartment glows warm and welcoming. Ahead of me, the future stretches wide and full of possibility. And somewhere across the city, in an apartment he can barely afford, Jasper is learning that actions have consequences. That betrayal has a price. That some women don't just walk away. Some women burn the bridge behind them and build something better on the other side. I'm one of those women, and I've never been happier.